What's up, wrestling fans and trading card collectors? Welcome to another episode of Wrestling with Cards. I'm your host, Zan. You can check me out on social platforms at Zan Morning. Today we've got Tom on the show from, let me see if I can get this right. Collect a WrestlePalooza. Oof, got it. Tom runs let's do this again. Collect a WrestlePalooza. It's a mouthful, but I love the name, and we're going to talk about how he came up with that name in this video. But that's his YouTube channel, and he's got a heck of a catchy intro song to all his videos. You're going to want to check that out. And please subscribe while you're there. I'll have the link in the show notes to his website, which has his social media, his YouTube, everything you need to know about him. Definitely go support him if you enjoy this video. Tom collects not only wrestling cards, but some other collectibles such as wrestling figures, UFC cards, and some other odds and ends. I'm a big fan of the variety personally, and we get to talk about a lot of that. And we talk about content creation, finance in the hobby, and much, much more. But before we get into that, just a few other ways you can help support my content. The easiest thing you can do, it's free, and it is really one of the biggest helps, is hit that subscribe button and tell a friend about this show. Got to get more people watching this, and then if they like it and if you like it, give me that thumbs up. Make sure to check out the podcast I'm involved with if you want some more wrestling card content, audio only. My personal podcast, the Wrestling with Cards podcast, as well as the Worlds Collide podcast with myself and Tony Vella from WrestlingTradingCards.com. If you want to help out the show monetarily, check out the links below to Wrestling with Cards on Patreon. For as little as $1 a month, you can have your name in the credits and get exclusive content. There's also higher tiers where, the more you pay, the more you can get involved or the more things you get. Also, you can check out my eBay store if you're interested in purchasing something. Got a lot of cool hobby stuff in there, collectibles, cards, wrestling stuff, etc. You can check me out on social media. I'm pretty much on all platforms at this point, I think. And of course, links to donations for buying me a coffee. If you'd like to buy me a coffee, because you know I gotta stay caffeinated to do these videos. And speaking of that, let's just go ahead right now, and jump in to the conversation with Tom from Collect a WrestlePalooza. I did it again, third time's a charm. Tom, what's up? Welcome to the channel.
Hey, Zan, I'm thrilled to be here. This is exciting.
I think we got to start off by talking about how we even crossed paths to begin with, because it's an interesting story. If everybody remembers, around Christmas time, I did the Christmas video giveaway and wanted people to kind of talk about their favorite Christmas memories and kind of, if was it hobby related, if it wasn't. And Tom actually won the contest. So I'll give you, and he did a video on it. I'll give you just a second to talk about that whole experience of us crossing paths like that.
Sure. Well, that's a great place to start. So I'm a big supporter of your channel, first of all. I love watching the content. And it was an opportunity to post a story. And as I started thinking about my own Christmas memories and what was a memorable Christmas for me, one memory immediately popped into mind. And, growing up, my family was always pretty frugal. We led a standard middle-class life, but sometimes on Christmas I'd get what I wanted, sometimes I wouldn't. And one thing that I always wanted that I didn't ask for was a video camera. And the funny thing about it is my mom actually won a contest on the old Regis and Kathy Lee show.
Oh, really?
For a gift certificate to Service Merchandise, which I hadn't known. And she used
also that's a total throwback nostalgia store. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. And no plugs to Regis and Kathy Lee, but anyway, so she used that to buy me a video camera, and I hadn't asked for one. And then it was the last present that I opened. And actually, before I opened it, she said, "Was there anything that you wanted that you didn't ask for?" And I told her, "Yeah, I know they're expensive, but a video camera I would have really liked." So that started a lot of my own creative pursuits in media content, of course, just as a kid messing around. But I posted about that on your channel, and apparently you liked the comment enough to send me some awesome wrestling cards. So,
well, the cool thing about it is I didn't actually have anything to do with the comments. I wanted it to be like a completely unbiased competition, if you want to call it a competition, contest, whatever. Right. And so I reached out to a complete third-party person. I was like, hey, do you mind taking a look at these comments? And it came down to yours, and I think there were one or two others. And ultimately, we decided on yours. So, and thanks for doing the video. It was a nice promotion for me to hopefully spread the word about my channel, which is why we're here. Let's talk about the hobby and spread the word about the channel, obviously. So you talked about your childhood. I'm assuming that's where your wrestling starts. Just give us a brief history of how you got into wrestling and any kind of like sticking points of why you're still a wrestling fan that carried over from your original days.
Absolutely. Great question. So I agree with you. I think the hobby comes down to nostalgia and comes down to early memories and reliving those early memories. Ultimately, there's a reason that we collect little pieces of cardboard that are
Yeah.
relatively worthless, but we assign a lot of value to them. So as a kid, my earliest memories were at 4 p.m. ESPN would play old AWA, Legends of World Class, and I was hooked. I was also hooked on the early WWF, the 1980s. I call it the golden age of wrestling. In my basement, I actually had a snowmobile suit that I stuffed with cushions and used to practice the moves that I would see on TV. And then a little bit later in life, I had purchased some 1990 classics and some of the 85 and 87 WWF cards, which just survived in my closet. And then, of course, behind me, you see, some figures. Half of those are probably from my childhood collection. And during the pandemic, I went on eBay and noticed that some of those things had value. And I said, hey, this is something that I want to invest a little bit more time in and see where it goes.
So you mentioned you bought some cards. Like, that's one thing that a lot of people I talk to on the channel or just on social media, a lot of them were not collecting cards as a kid because they either couldn't find them or they weren't aware of them. Were you also into the traditional baseball, basketball, football, non-sport? Were you doing that stuff too? Or what did it start with wrestling?
Absolutely. I was collecting baseball cards as a kid, the back, junk wax era. I had my Jose Canseco's and my Roger Clemens and all those cards that I saved as well, which I always joke when I was a kid, I bought a complete set of, I think it was 88 tops. And I wrote on it that I paid $35 for that set. And recently I looked on eBay and they're probably going for about $35 now. So,
hey, you didn't lose anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But
all
yeah,
right.
no, I had dreams of, as every kid does, collecting the next Mickey Mantle and that sort of thing. But I wasn't into baseball cards at that point. The wrestling cards were, like I said, because I loved it. The baseball cards were more just because that was the thing that the kids were doing at that point.
So what would you say is your driving force of transitioning from that time to current day with wrestling cards specifically?
Sure. That's a great question. I think that for me, seeing that other folks find value in them too is extremely important. That gives me motivation. I mean, of course, from a financial perspective, but then also that being there, and then channels like yours and seeing other media creators that really have a lot of passion for this. That's infectious. So I think that over the last year, of course, during the pandemic, a lot of people got into cards again and all that sort of stuff, and then just exploring the community and seeing the energy that was out there. It built into me buying a couple more cards, buying a few more cards, having fun with it, and it's kind of steamrolled from there.
So one thing I want to talk about and this would take it whatever direction you want to, and there's a lot probably to dig into here, is when I watch your content, not only are you buying wrestling cards, but you've picked up figures, you've picked up sports cards, you've picked up some UFC, you're big into UFC cards.
Yep.
So how would you describe your style of collecting?
I'm looking for good values. One thing that we'll probably mention in the future as well in this interview is my career's in finance. I'm a businessman as well. So I think part of enjoying the hobby and having fun with the hobby is not regretting your purchases. Having that, I'm sure most collectors have done it. I've done it myself, buying something that you later regret, or maybe you paid too much for, or that type of thing. So I think that feeling good about collecting is about not only, ultimately finding cards that trigger that nostalgia and that feeling of joy, but also that you feel good about the purchase as an investment. So I try to collect things that, one, I know about. I feel like I have more than the average person's knowledge of wrestling history. So I feel like I can make more informed decisions in wrestling, and that'll tap into the nostalgia, but it'll also tap into the business side of it. The figures is pure nostalgia. All of my figures are buy and hold. I have a collection of LJNs now just because I love them in my collection. But the wrestling cards are more for nostalgia / investment. Ultimately, I'm looking to start a business with that. So I would say my style of collecting is, one, buy what I love, but then two, try to find good values and things that I can afford. I definitely have a cap. I won't spend over a certain amount on a card, and I try to stay, really true to that, so that I don't end up regretting my purchase later. I try not to make impulsive decisions.
That's really hard to do too. It's something that I've been talking a lot about in my videos or with Tony on the Worlds Collide podcast or my own podcast. Basically, any platform is looking for value and thinking outside the box. You're doing that. Now, I go a little bit more adventurous with buying stuff I don't even know about, because I know like what a baseline market price might be for a single trading card, regardless of what that may be. So I look at margins and stuff like that. You're more picking individual cards. What's going through your mind as far as like when you're looking for specific value, even if it's maybe like, hey, I think this is a cool card, but it doesn't necessarily fit my PC per se, but I think it's a good value. What goes through your mind and thought process of that may be able to help some people out there watching this that are still struggling with, that mindset of, there's a lot of people out there. Sorry, I'll get back to the question a minute. A lot of people out there that are like straight up collectors. So thinking like that sometimes might be hard to comprehend others doing that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think so. And my response to that would be thinking about value in terms of what will someone else pay for this. I think that there's a trap with collectors thinking that if I think this is valuable because it's rare, because it excites me, because I haven't seen it before, that ultimately someone else will have that same perception of that object. And there's an old saying that just because something is scarce doesn't mean that anyone's going to want it. And just because something's abundant doesn't mean that it's worthless either. Right. So what I try to do is I try to stay pretty objective about that. I'm always combing eBay. And the most important thing, of course, and I'm a relatively new collector in terms of taking it more seriously. I've only been doing it for a year or two now. But my friend is the eBay sold. Look at what other people are buying. Yeah. Look at what other people are paying for it. And don't assume that you can sell it for 1 penny more than that. If you see something that's a good value, I mean, it's all in the numbers. Look at what someone else would assign to that card. And I find you can find a lot of values in auctions. Buy it nows sometimes are a little bit trickier, but a lot of times you might find something in an auction that ends at, you happen to be up at 2 a.m. on Tuesday night. And for whatever reason, the seller didn't put a great title on it. It's not a very searchable listing, that type of thing. And that's where I look for values. I look for it compared to, the raw data and sales.
So something else that I have at times struggled with, believe it or not, I talk about buying and selling a lot, but it's happened to me. Everybody struggles sometimes and takes their losses with looking at things. From my perspective, there's been times where I get a little bit too off track, or I start too many projects. And while that is, it's fun to look at new things and start new things, I've really kind of curated my collection and narrowed down my focuses on, this is my stuff that I want to hold because it's my favorite stuff in the world. This is the stuff that if I had to, I could sell it. And this is the stuff that's like pure selling stuff. And I've kind of changed my strategy as far as when I'm approaching, I'll call it inventory, my store inventory for my eBay store, stuff that I'm just literally looking to sell. It used to be where I was looking at kind of what you're doing and looking at what do I think is a good value. And instead of doing that, I found myself buying more bulk, like I said, and just looking at straight margins. And the reason being is because I was looking at some of these things I thought were values. Like, okay, here's this guy on NXT. I started like prospecting Karrion Kross, Killer Kross, which turned into a complete super collection. But, I would look at other talent in NXT and I'd be like, okay, well, is this guy going to be the next Seth Rollins, Roman Reigns, Daniel Bryan kind of guy? And you'd look at that and, maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't. And that I just found that I was like paying attention to too much of like, I'll call it prospecting on whether it was rookie cards, whether it was certain sets people weren't looking at, instead of just looking at the numbers and the margins. What that was doing was throwing me off my actual focus of my PC. And instead of spending more money to get better stuff in my PC that I wanted, I was like, nickel and diming at stuff that maybe not was a good value, but I just wasn't enjoying it as much. I say all that to say, do you have any problems focusing and distinguishing your PC from these value plays that you're looking at?
That's a great question. My PC is based on the cards that I love. I mean, I think that it doesn't go much further than that. There definitely are some basics that I think about. You know, okay. I've got some Hulk Hogan cards in my PC because I think Hulk Hogan cards, in terms of being a long-term play, are not going to go down in value. I have some autographs in my PC. Again, I mean, there's a term in finance called intrinsic value. You know, what is the actual value of this? So if you have a piece of cardboard, it has literally no intrinsic value. Mm-hmm. If you have a piece of cardboard that has an autograph on it, it has a little bit more intrinsic value. So I think that cards like that tend to hold, you know, maybe a better play for long term. So my PC is based on cards that I love and also cards that I don't think will lose value long term. Anything else, I'm open to selling.
Let's try, and you know, that's a good transition. We're talking about value and stuff. Let's go ahead and talk about like finance in the hobby. And one thing that I think people struggle with, you know, okay, so you're saying Tom says go out and buy value, right? Well, right. What is value? Is value a $500 card that could go to $5,000? Is value a 50-cent card that could go to $1? And a lot of people out there are, you know, they say, well, I just go out and buy what I like, and if it goes to zero, I don't care. I still think that's a lie. Like they're lying to themselves, really. Even if, like, me and you both have PC cards, and if they go down, sure. If they go up, sure. Like, either way, we might not sell some of the stuff we have. But there's right. Like, when you bring money into the equation with cards and looking for values, again, going back to what you were talking about, I think some people, specifically within wrestling cards, and I've talked about it on previous videos, that mindset's kind of a struggle. So what advice could you tell people as far as like where to start, where to go, that works for you as far as like how to build your collection? Because there's a lot of quantity over quality, quality over quantity, condensing your collection down to just a handful of cards. A lot of different approaches. What's been something that's worked for you and help you get from zero to where you are now?
Sure. No, that's a great starting point to talking about this more as a business. So I think that hits on it. Is think about that you are running a business, and if you're running a business, there's going to be work, and there's no way around that. So you're going to have fun with it, but if your job is to do something that you love, that's great. It makes the work more enjoyable. Yeah. But at the end of the day, it's still going to be work. So I try to think about what I do for my career, and you talked about that a little bit, is finance, but more specifically, I hedge commodities. So if we're talking about a commodity, you have no power or control over what the price of the commodity is. That market is completely dictated by fundamentals that are not within your control. And I think the same thing is true for prospecting. And I try not to prospect really at all, outside of saying, you know, no-brainers. Okay, LeBron James cards are cheap right now. Yeah. In my opinion. LeBron James is a GOAT. You know, he's having a bad season with the Lakers. Great time to buy LeBron James, but I'm not going to go out and buy a $2,000 LeBron James because to me, that's too risky. To me, I'm going to buy cards that have more upside than downside. You know, I mean, you can buy LeBron James rookie cards for, you know, $30 to $50 right now. And granted, they're junk wax type cards, but it's still a LeBron James rookie for $30 to $50. The most you're going to lose on that is, you know, maybe 10 or $20. But the upside on that, I think, is a lot more. But outside of that, I try to think about turning your inventory. So instead of just buying and holding, a way to control the ups and downs of the market is to always be buying and selling. Because if you're trying to always buy at the top, buy at the bottom and sell at the top, right, you're not going to get it right all the time. But if you're always buying and selling continually and, you know, keeping your inventory kind of at a minimum, or at least at a point that you feel comfortable with. I think that if your inventory is bloated beyond your financial means, that's a real problem. And then it's not going to be fun anymore. You're going to lose sleep at night and you're going to be, liquidating inventory that you don't really need to liquidate, maybe because you need some cash. So if you're always engaging in buying and selling, I think that's the best way to control these market movements up and down. And think about it like a business. I mean, that's what any business does. A retail business is always looking to move inventory, increase turns, and not have a big capital investment. So as much as you can think about your hobby in that way, then I think that you're going to be able to sustain it. And the other thing along those same lines is to say, you might have an emotional attachment to a card and not want to sell it, but even owning it for a year is a lot better than never having owned it at all. So having that pass through your inventory and have it move is not a bad thing. It's like a relationship. They might come, they might go, but enjoy it for the ownership you did have of it, and not for the fact that you're going to keep and hold on to it forever.
That's a great observation. And it kind of leads me into an unexpected question, which I didn't have in my notes here that kind of spawned out of that. Why do you think that I'll call it the general hobby, why do you think they're so against money, treating things like a business? And they're like, you can't be a true collector if you're looking at it from I completely disagree, because essentially my eBay store is a full-time job at this point. Like, I put more hours into it than I probably should. That being said, I still got a few cards over here that like you would have to offer me like 6 figures plus for me to even consider selling some of the stuff. And it's not worth that. And that's what it would take to get that out of my collection. There's a perfect balance between the two that does nothing but benefit you. I mean, you've said it, I've said it, others have said it, and we've proven that it can be done with some work. So why do you think it's like, they call them the flippers, even though I just consider them businessmen, really? Why do you think it's money and finance gets such a bad rap with a hobby?
It's a good question. I don't really know a great answer to that. I mean, things that come to mind is maybe the types of people that you might see in social media that are talking about that and may not convey the same passion for it. I think that people that are in the business and might be flipping, if we're able to communicate, our love of the card and our love of the sport, our love of our relationship to, the wrestlers themselves, the object of it, the feeling of opening up a wax pack, those types of things, maybe that will help. But I think that, people want to see any type of collection, be it, wrestling cards or sports cards or wrestling figures, as, a pure passion play. And I think that you're absolutely right that, blending those two things together and communicating to people that you can have passion for it, but at the same time, the reality is like what you're doing. If you're able to do eBay full time, that gives you more time to spread the word, because then you're spending 8 hours of your day doing something else that you don't quite enjoy. So, for me, it's a natural blend because it's what I went to school for. It's part of my career. It's part of what I think about on a daily basis anyway. And to me, it's ultimately about how to have fun, in the hobby, because I don't think anyone is going to have fun just spending too much money, hoarding stuff, having a basement full of things, collecting dust. That's not fun. And it also isn't healthy. So I think the more that we can communicate that, that transition, that buying and selling, that, having there be a true commerce in any hobby just makes that hobby bigger and makes it more accessible, makes it better for everyone.
Yeah. One other thing I'll touch on, since we're kind of talking about that, is Gary V with his Zero Cool VeeFriends cards lately that came out, and people just trashed him and said he's pumping a market of cartoon cards. And in the meantime, I'm like, guys, have you seen Pokemon? Side note. Anyway, Gary V's really what got me into understanding the commerce of trading cards and collectibles. I've always been a collector since as far as I can remember, but what I would take breaks. Maybe it was video games, maybe it was comic books, wrestling cards, figures, etc. I would take these breaks, and I would always buy and sell stuff to pay for the stuff I wanted. All of a sudden, I see Gary V's videos with his trash talk, going to garage sales and buying something for $0.25, selling it for $5. and I heard him talking about sports cards. And I've told the story a million times, but I'll tell it again for anybody who's watching this, maybe for the first time. I went to the LCS. I bought a 5-row box of quote junk cards for $15. I started selling those cards for $1, $3, $5, $10. I still have some of that inventory to this day. And this was late 2018 when I started doing this. I worked that up, bought more collections into what I have today. Is that kind of what you've done too? Or have you just kind of taken your, I'll call it life money to put into the hobby?
A little bit of each. Ultimately, I'm thinking about my hobby in very long stages, meaning that, I'm the first year into this, and I realized that, or first, couple years into it, that I'm building a foundation. So,
gotcha.
Right now, I'm more interested in learning from my mistakes than I am in saying that if I'm not making money, that there's something wrong with what I'm doing. So at this point, I am a little bit more willing to put my life money into it and maybe take some risks. I know that goes against what I said about having a cap and being disciplined about it, but
I don't know. I mean, if you still have a budget, I think that's fine.
Right. But I'm very aware that, right now, if I'm spending my life money into it to learn and to get better at it, then that's great. I mean, the ultimate example is, I was talking about LeBron rookies earlier, and I did overbuy or overpay for a card that I purchased. I think it was one of his box set rookies. I got it in a PSN, and I paid $200 plus for it. I didn't do my research. I bought it impulsively, and that mistake spurred me on to buy more and more, because I said to myself, I overpaid for this one and I'm not going to overpay for that one again. So, I consider that a lesson. I consider that a way for me next time down the road to make a little bit of money in it and to have that ultimately seed the hobby. So yes, ultimately I do want this to be at least a net neutral. Making money at it would be great. I'm not, thinking about things in those terms yet, because I also don't want to halt myself. I also don't want to feel like, I'm a failure if I'm not making money and then I don't do it. So I'm okay with spending some life money in it right now, but ultimately that's where I'm going.
I like to take the self-sustaining approach, because almost everything I sell goes. I think there's been 2 occasions where I've pulled out a couple $100 plus out of hobby money that I made to then pay for life stuff, not counting business expenses for eBay store and stuff like that. So like almost all the money I make goes right back into buying more collections or buying a PC item or doing that. So that's the way I like to approach it. I know a lot of people out there do this for a living, and that's cool that you can. I just like to have it to self-sustain the hobby. And I love the buying and selling aspect that you talked about as far as keeping your inventory churning over and over. That's something that has become kind of like content creation, a hobby within a hobby for me. I don't know why I enjoy the process so much of, people hate shipping, they hate listing, they hate taking pictures, and sorting. I love all that stuff. I don't know why. It just works out for me great. One other thing I want to touch on before we transition into a different topic. You talked about losses. Let's talk about losses. I think that will help people. What is one thing in your pursuit that you're doing now, as far as I tried to do this and it just flat out didn't work? It wasn't that your thought process was wrong. It was a actual strategy maybe that you took that has just been proven to not work at all. Not because it didn't work for a player, sure, a set, but something that just doesn't work. What is something that you could pass on to some people that you would advise against doing?
The first one that comes to mind is don't buy the hype.
Good call.
There are always going to be cards that, for whatever reason, you're going to see a number of them on your various auction platforms, and you're going to see, Ultimate Warrior Rookie, Classic 1990, perfect example. I mean, I think some of those sold for $300, $400, $500 when, a year or two ago, which in my opinion is way too much for that card.
Yeah, agreed.
I bought a Simone Biles. I love Simone Biles. I think she's a great gymnast. I think she's a great spokesperson for mental health, and I think that she's doing the sport for all the right reasons in gymnastics. Love her, but I don't know anything about her, and I don't know anything about gymnastics. During the Olympics, I bought a Simone Biles PSA 10. Not a good investment. Not good to buy during the Olympics, an Olympic star. So but I said to myself, okay, I made that mistake. I'm going to hold on to that card, and I'll sell it 4 years from now when the Olympics rolls around again and the market's up a little bit for her card. So, be looking for things that people aren't talking about, or that, may not be. And I know that a lot of channels talk about this in terms of timing, but it's just second nature. I mean, don't buy NBA cards during the NBA finals. Don't buy football cards around the Super Bowl. Don't buy Olympics cards around the Olympics. It's a no-brainer. Buy things that you like, but try to time it so that you're buying it when people aren't talking about it.
Yeah, it's like a reverse timing the market. Most people are like, you got to time the market on the sale. But I actually think making the money on the buy is more important than when you sell it.
Well, you were talking about on a few videos ago, the Undertaker rookies, Merlin Classic. And I started buying some Merlin Undertaker rookies. An SGC 9.5 just sold for, I think, $95. And the auction ending while I was at work, I was going to make a bid on it. I think $95 for an SGC 9.5 Merlin 91 Undertaker is a great buy.
Agreed.
Now, those cards right now, I don't think people are talking about them as much, but as you've alluded to, they're better cards, they're better images, they're rarer, and those are the ones that you want to buy. You don't want to buy, the classic 91 portrait. Thank God I didn't buy one of those a year or two ago. I mean, those are way overvalued. Still a great card, probably a great long-term hold, but not when everyone is talking about it.
So let's transition into the actual collection for a moment. Is there any, what would you say is your favorite, if you had to pick one, favorite item or a couple of items that are in your PC that, we talked a lot about money, selling, churning over your inventory. What's a couple of things that, like me, you're like, hey, I need life-changing money for it to go out of my collection?
I'm going to show you one.
Let's do it.
Well, there's actually two of them. The first one not incredibly rare, but this is apparently the Undertaker action figure to own. The reason I love this action figure is my wife bought it for me. And
there we go.
She told me now she will never buy me a wrestling action figure again because it was so stressful for her because she had no idea what to buy me. And I love it. And this isn't the type of figure I would normally buy. I mean, I buy the Hasbros and the LJNs for the nostalgia. But
those are great figures, though. I used to have a bunch of those. The Razor Ramon one was one of my favorites in that series. Yeah,
the bad guy. On my bowling team, of course, you see my PBA shirt. Bowling is another passion of mine. We have ties with the bad guy and Razor Ramon.
Awesome.
We all have bowling names. There's one guy on the bowling league that's his nickname is the Heartbreak Kid, so he's the Shawn Michaels. Yeah, we went against them last year. And then this is the second item, and I'm not going to take this out. This is a G1 Transformers mail-away watch.
Gotcha. Yeah.
AFA case. It's an 80. The reason I would never sell this again, I was that one kid that didn't ever remove this from the box when I got it when I was a kid.
Is that your childhood piece?
Yep.
That's amazing.
Yep. And, at one point when my wife and I were going to buy a house, I did put this on eBay and I put an astronomical price because we needed money for it at that point. And I'm glad no one made an offer. I put it up for $10,000, which I know was way too high, but I actually think it's worth that. I mean, it's not too many people have this or have it complete or have it. I actually went ahead and I did the surgery to remove the watch battery. So that it's not going to corrode over time and it's packaged, that sort of stuff. So, I think this is a great object. Again, you see them come up on eBay for every once in a while for, $500 to $1,000, but rarely are they complete and rarely do they have the box in this good condition. So, this literally went in my closet when I got it as a kid and I never opened it.
That was actually going to be my next question, is if you had any cool stories behind the items. And I think you just basically, you summed it up.
Yeah. So those are the two things that I think now I'm glad, like I said, I'm glad no one made any offers on this when I did put it up on eBay. Because now I've learned my lesson. This is an object to keep. And that other one. Oh, I have one more too. I know it's not wrestling cards, but
it doesn't matter. Let's do it. We're all about collecting, regardless of what it is.
And I leave it in this envelope because this is
nice.
Star Wars: Return of the Jedi Yoda, orange. Actually, it's a brown snake, which I think is a little bit rarer. I don't know much about these figures, but I think the brown snake is a little rarer. Does have the yellow bubble, but the package is in good condition.
What's the store price tag on it? That's always one thing that's intriguing to me.
This was one my mom bought this for either me or my brother for one Christmas. Left it in her drawer and forgot about it. So again, never got taken out of the package. And then, when my parents retired and cleaned out the house, she gave this to me. And, so this always reminds my mom. So I would never sell this either.
And I keep trying to push people to find the items that they can tell stories behind. And those are generally the ones that are going to stay in your PC, regardless of value. So thanks for sharing the stories and thanks for sharing those items. Now let's move into kind of our final topic of the interview, content creation. I know it's something you've started more recently. A lot of things to talk about. So how has it been so far with you starting the YouTube channel? Collect a WrestlePalooza. It's a tongue twister.
Yes. It was a joke. It was a joke at first. My wife and I, we were, I was feeling down about work and my job and working too many hours and golden handcuffs, just working to the grind.
Yeah.
And I remember we were taking a drive. We parked in a parking lot. We're just, we're entrepreneurs anyway. We have an Airbnb rental that we do, and we're always looking for side hustles. And I said, I'm going to start a channel on this wrestling stuff, and I'm going to call it Collect WrestlePalooza. It was just a joke. It came out of my head. And then I said, you know what? I'm going to run with this. This is fun. So how's it been? It's been great. I can tell you it's frustratingly difficult at first. Yes. And I think that I know everyone has gone through it, that has made it. And I look at my videos and I look at people that have made it and I say, what's the difference? And there's so much that goes into it. And I'm learning on that every day. So recently on that as well, I have started taking the process a little bit more seriously in terms of trying to learn about the YouTube algorithms and which videos are going to be recommended and what I'm doing wrong, and to not have as much of an ego around it. At first my thumbnails had tons of words all over it and indecipherable, and I'm trying to, make those a little more simple, trying to get, video topics that might have a little bit more of an emotional connection. And again, thinking about it like a business. I mean, I know one of the things that you do is these interviews and the podcasts and having longer content and, things that people might sort of get into and kind of have on in the background or be on a regular schedule that they look forward to. They understand what they're going to get. Trying to think about my own content in those terms too. And I think that's the biggest lesson for me is take my own ego out of it. What do people want to see, and because ultimately, I mean, they're the ones who are clicking and they're the ones who are watching. I mean, they're not doing it, because they have nothing better to do. They're doing it because they want to gain something from it. So, but frustratingly difficult. And I think a lot of that too is in regards to, scalability. If you take, one doubled is 2, 2 doubled is 4, 4 doubled is 8, 8 doubled is 16. So I think there's a tipping point that, beyond a certain point, I think things are going to start rolling a little bit more. But right now, I'm just trying to make stuff that people would want to see.
So what would you have advice-wise? I've talked about it a little bit, but I always like to get other people's perspectives, whether they're way more successful than me or whether they're just starting out and they, kind of getting their feet wet, so to speak. What's something that you would advise for people who maybe have an itch to start creating content, whether they're watching this and it's for wrestling cards, which we need more wrestling card content. I keep preaching that. The more content, the more people are talking about wrestling cards, the more relevant they're going to be with mainstream, and they're going to be recognized finally as, legitimate trading cards. So what's something that you would advise to people who are wanting to get started, today?
I think at first, if your goal is that you want to get people to watch your videos and you want subscribers, and I think that that's a healthy goal, is to edit. Really be very stringent about your content and say every word you say, every sentence you say, everything you put on your video should have a meaning or a purpose behind it. And really, be okay with editing out something that is just doesn't work in the video, whether it's, you're opening up a box and my first few videos, when I opened boxes, I'd show the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
No one's going to want to sit through that. No one's going to want to watch me with a scissor struggling with a cardboard box. But even something that simple, take twice as long in editing your videos, at least at first, until you learn about what content is actually going to be something that people are going to want to see.
Yeah. And there's a lot of different ways to approach, the style of content you want to do. And I could say just as well as you, it's frustrating. You put, I've always been an edit, like I'm not a pro by any means. I'm punk rocking everything from this interview we're doing right now to putting the video. Like I'm just doing the best I can with trying to learn as much as I can. And I actually spend more time editing than I do anything else, not because I'm so stringent on it, but because it's just so time consuming. And I think that's one of my most frustrating things is when you spend the hours and hours editing, shooting, making thumbnails, making sure you get the tags right with the algorithm stuff that you spoke about. And you do all that to get like 5 views. And it does build, it does scale the more you do it, but man, is that frustrating.
Right. I think, at first it's stick to it. And, you asking me to come on your channel, that's a huge burst in my sales,
cross promotion.
Love it, but little things like that are what's going to keep you going, and don't set goals that are unrealistic.
Yeah.
Get excited about 5 subscribers, get excited about 10 subscribers, celebrate. If you have 1 new subscriber in a month, that's 1 more than you had the month prior. And you're going to watch a lot of videos on YouTube that are going to give you metrics for success and say, hey, you should have 1,000 subscribers within your first year, or you should. It's baloney. I don't think anyone does. I really don't. I think anyone that's made it either, has professional editing experience and they're doing it, strictly as a business, and they really know what they're doing, and they're creating content for the sake of, for the sake of getting views, and that's okay.
Yeah. Anyone
else, it's taken them forever and a lot of hard work.
Especially when you pick a niche like wrestling cards.
Right.
We can't even get the mainstream big time podcast to give 2 seconds to wrestling cards. I'll talk about everything else, like I always say, but they just don't want to talk about wrestling cards. But maybe Panini Prism with that WWE release coming up, or well, actually by the time this video is out, Prism should be out. Maybe that's going to change the game. I don't know. You have any quick thoughts on that as we get out of here?
I don't know much about the Panini Prisms wrestling release, so no, I don't have any thoughts on that. I mean, I primarily collect stuff from the 80s and 90s, so I've been staying away from the modern stuff, but I do think that anyone that is making wrestling cards now, I do think that it's going to help the hobby if there are more and more people that are creating wrestling cards, and I think that wrestling cards do have.
Yeah, I've always said like wrestling cards are wrestling itself, but transitioning to the cards, like it's timeless. Like right. I love, you can pick up a Hogan, a Rock, a John Cena. If you want to go way back, like Bruiser Brody, Terry Funk, Pat Patterson, like whoever it is you like, you can have that piece of cardboard. It reminds you of matches, moments in time, storylines. And the thing that I love about wrestling as opposed to any other genre is how many people outside of wrestling do you know that go back and actually like, okay, I got this Hogan card, I got this Warrior card. I want to go back and watch WrestleMania when they battled it out. Or I want to go back and watch the Royal Rumble 1992 because I've got the card of this guy and he had a big moment in that. You don't see that so much with sports cards and other non-sports cards even. It's like people, it's such a modern driven thing. And that's just one thing I love about wrestling. So Yeah, that was completely off topic, but let everybody know where they can find you. And again, we're going to have links to everything you talk about, your YouTube channel, social media, all that stuff will be in the show notes for everybody. But let everybody know where they can find you and just any parting words you have for anybody watching this.
Sure. Well, actually, just created a website, collectorwrestlepalooza.com. And that has links to all the social media. It's just a one-pager right now, but I will be developing that ongoing. But I have a channel on YouTube. I have Instagram, Twitter, all the basic social media platforms. But it's all called Collector WrestlePalooza. And
it's amazing that name that could turn into a big thing now if your YouTube channel really takes off, just came out of nowhere. That's amazing. Like here, I thought you were like maybe plotting and planning, like, okay, I'm going to use this word with this, or maybe I liked WrestlePalooza 98 from ECW. Like that's completely off topic. That's the first pay-per-view I personally ordered with my own money. So
yeah.
All right, man.
Old school ECW guy. That's great.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you for your time. Appreciate everything you're able to give the audience today. Thank you guys for watching.
Good. Thank you.
Great conversation with Tom today. And I just love reaching out and doing interviews like this, connecting with other people in the hobby and building these relationships with not only people in the hobby, but also content creators. It's always great to share ideas and perspectives in the way that we all operate and do what we do. Make sure to check out Tom's channel. Again, let's see if we can get this right again. Collector WrestlePalooza. I think I'm a pro at this point. Links in the show notes to his website, which has links to the YouTube channel and his social media and much more. Please subscribe to his channel. Check it out. Check out that awesome Collector WrestlePalooza. That's 5 times. 6 times if I'm going to say it again. Collector WrestlePalooza catchy intro song. I need to get something like that. I don't know. We'll see. But we thank you guys for watching. Again, check out everything in the show notes. Everything I'm doing is in the show notes as well, and all the ways you can help show your support to not only me and Tom, but just building the community in general. But until next time, in the next video we put out, which I don't even know what it's going to be, click the videos on the screen right now for more great wrestling card content. We'll see you there.